All right, so we've got some J-Cat and then a Profusion palette. Actually, let me zoom in and then we'll just look at each one of these one by one. So this is the Profusion Mixed Metals palette. It's 9 matte and metallic shades. This came as part of a kit at Target 2 holidays ago. It has a giant mirror up at the top here. I did think the shades were actually pretty good quality. I was a little surprised at the mattes in particular. I thought they were super pigmented and actually really, really blendable. And then the shimmer shades weren't bad either. They packed a decent wallop. You did have to build them up a little bit or use your finger like I just did to kind of get that intense pigmentation. Just feel like I have this a zillion times over in my collection. And even though it's nice quality, I'm not gonna reach for this over some of my other neutral palettes. So I just feel like it's redundant. And even though the quality is there, it's not one I'm reaching for. So I do think I'm going to pass this guy along. Next up, we've got this Extreme Accent Pocket Shadow from J-Cat. This I bought because that Taylor raves about them. This is the shade Red Carpet Premiere. Here's what I would say about this. First time I used this, I actually used nothing but the matte shades. So you've got a row of mattes here and a row of mattes at the bottom, and then you've got these shimmer shades at the top. Mattes were beautiful, and I thought, oh yeah, I see why Taylor enjoys this palette so much. I felt like they were easy to blend, good pigmentation, just nice quality eyeshadow in general. And then the next time I used this palette, I tried to use some of the shimmer shades. This white shade actually is a nice sort of satiny shimmer pearl shade. And then this rush shade actually works okay. These four, I can't get them to work. I don't understand. They immediately developed hard pan, if you can see that there. They are completely unusable shades at this point. I can't use my finger, I can't use a brush. I've tried scraping off a layer and this sort of hard pan immediately comes back. They are patchy, they barely show up. Like, yeah, like I am rubbing my finger in this and I'm getting like next to nothing. You can see that there, it barely left any shadow. So I don't know if I have a dud palette. I know these were sold out for a while and maybe they rushed making them or changed manufacturers, but I can't recommend them based on my own experience, and I don't enjoy this palette. And to be honest, I'm not even gonna pass this one on. I'm just gonna chuck it. I don't even feel comfortable donating this or giving it to a friend. This is also from J-Cat. This came out in the fall. They had a couple different color stories that were a little odd, if I'm being honest. So this is the Secret Paradise palette. It does have a small mirror at the top. It's kind of a cool toned color story with like a random mustard thrown in. The mustard still throws me every time I use this palette because I just don't see how it fits into the color story that's here. I did like that they had some shades that I don't typically see in cool toned palettes. So you had a matte navy, you had a matte teal shade, you had a whole sort of gradient of more taupey shades here, and then a really cool and really pigmented navy shade. Like these are packing some serious pigmentation. The shimmer shades are just, they're no doubt, they're good shimmer shades. They are a little bit more on the crumbly texture, but they have some sort of either a mineral oil or a dimethicone or something that kind of causes them to, I don't know, come back together is the only way I can think to describe it. The matte shades are really pretty. I think they are a different texture than the one we just talked about. Not quite as, I don't know, it doesn't have quite the same creaminess as the last palette, but they definitely work. You just have to build them up a little bit. I've made some very pretty looks with it. This mustard shade is actually sort of a really pretty orange shade. I wouldn't even call it mustard. I mean, it's a pretty strong orange shade, which is really interesting, sort of the color of Kraft mac and cheese. One challenge I do have with it is I do feel like they have replicated a shade at least 3 times the way I see it. So you've got a deeper, darker purple, and then these two maroon shades here. There's just too much similarity. I would use these shades for the same reason. And I get, as you swatch them, they're different colors, but to be honest, when I'm going to create an eye look and I want that sort of cranberry reddish or plumish look on my lid, I could just stand for one of them. And I kind of feel the same way about these two matte shades here. I think they're just too similar. This one's a little lighter, but even honestly, you could have just left me one of these and taken out these two. So at the end of the day, I just don't feel the passion to keep this one. And I do feel like that there are other people who could get this and really enjoy it. And I can sanitize it and get it over to Project Beauty Share, and it will find a much happier home. So I'm going to pass this guy on. All right, so the next two brands we're going to look at are Juvia's Place. So I have 3 Juvia's Place palettes here, and then I also have some BH Cosmetics. So we'll look at that. Let's start with one I know I want to keep. So this is the Deuce Palace by Juvia's Place. This is just a color story that makes me, I don't know, it makes me really, really happy. So you have 5 mattes, so the corner shades in the middle are matte, and then these 4 here are shimmer shades. So I definitely feel like there's this really pretty pinky purple story that goes on here. I feel like there's a really cool neutral palette with or neutral colors with a pop of teal green. I just feel like there's a lot of really interesting shades in here. I really felt like I could make some really fun, interesting looks. The mattes were super pigmented, a lot of fun to play with. I liked that I had pops of color that I felt were still wearable for me. And then you had this nice chocolate brown in the corner. This white shade at the top is actually one of those sort of duochrome pink white shifting shades. I don't know if you can see that there. So that shade at the top actually pairs really well when making sort of a pinky look. This is a beautiful super foiled nice pink shade here. This teal shade actually has some nice micro shimmer running through it. It's got a really nice gold shift to it. And then this shade down here, which I know throws a lot of people for a loop, is actually lighter than it looks in the pan. It looks pretty dark, but as you can see there, it's actually a really nice sort of mid-toned silver shade. So I love this palette. I think it gives me a lot of interesting color combos. It pushes me outside of my normal neutrals, and I think the quality of this palette is spectacular. This is the Nubian palette. This is one of their more neutral palettes. I had this in my last Shop My Stash, and I gotta be honest, guys, like I'm just not, there are some colors in here that I think are beautiful. I don't think the formula is bad at all. I think it's high quality formula. I don't know. I got tired of the same eye looks that I was creating inside of here. I really love this sort of peachy pink shade. I mean, to be honest, I'm half tempted to depot just that shade because it's so high foiled and such a pretty shade. Oh, and I really liked this rust shade. Same thing. Super, super intense pigmentation. So like I would want to keep the palette honestly for those 2 shades, and to me that's just not enough of a compelling reason. So I do think I'm going to pass this one on. I think this will get into somebody's hands who will thoroughly love it. The last Juvia's Place palette I have is the Masquerade Mini Palette. So this one is really fun because you have some neutrals down here on the bottom, and then you have these really bright shades here at the top. It is a really fun thing to kind of combo. There we go. My light's going in and out, so I apologize if the last couple palettes have been dark on you. So that is a matte there. You've got these 2 mattes here, and then these 2 mattes here. I definitely feel like Birkin and Fauna end up looking very similar on my eyes. I also need to pull in other sort of transition shades to build a look with this palette, but I really love these brights. And I don't have a lot of brights in my collection. I love, you've got a purple and a cobalt and an aqua and a teal and this beautiful green. You've got this super hot pink down here. I don't know, I just think it's really, really pretty. And then the shade Dahlia in the corner is a really beautiful sort of bronzy gold that's stunning. These just apply incredibly well to the eyes. I do like kind of building them up with a brush first, and then what I will typically do is take my finger and just intensify the look once I have it in place on my eyes. And this has continued to be my favorite brights palette of everything that I own, so I don't see myself passing this on. I will say, if you're interested in this palette, make sure you get the mini version. That's what this is. The full Masquerade palette is absolutely enormous, and I can't imagine anyone is going to go through that many eyeshadows that quickly. So anyway, this one is definitely staying. All right, and now we come to all of my BH Cosmetics palettes. So I'm gonna pull these in one at a time as well. All right, so this is the ShanXO, the Remix palette. I don't know if these are still available, to be totally honest. So the Remix version ended up with 2 sides with eyeshadows. It used to be lips on one side and eyes on another. So it's got this really pretty warm look on one side. Freaking love this matte shade down here. Now I will tell you, I really feel like in the last year, BH Cosmetics has massively stepped up their formula. So in two palettes we're gonna talk about here in a minute, I will say the formula of the mattes and shimmers is superior to what is in here, but I never had any issues working with the colors in here, and I really liked the color stories that Shannon put together. I thought they were really pretty. So that is the more sort of warm tone side. And on the other side, you have what was originally in the first palette, which was some more neutrals. Got a really pretty sort of honey wheat shade here that I think is really nice. It's got sort of a peachy undertone. You've got some rust shade, and then you've got a series of more neutral, almost cool tone limiting shades. Let me swatch these four so you can kind of see what I mean. You've got kind of a neutral light pearl color. You've got a more rosy mid-tone shade, and then you've got this really beautiful cool toned taupe, and then you've got this really cool duochrome down here in the bottom too, and I am a sucker for duochromes. Yeah, I like this palette. It's a muted neutral palette, but I feel like some of the undertones are just a little different than some of my other neutrals. I like how compact this is. I think this was really clever packaging to be able to kind of do 2 9 pans in something that was not big and bulky. So I'm not ready to part with this one. I enjoy this palette. This is the Carly Bible Deluxe Edition. So she expanded and changed some shades, and you ended up with more highlighters and kind of different pans down here, and then these really pretty sort of pinky mauve shades up top. This marble packaging on the inside was really pretty. You did have a mirror in this version as well. If I'm being honest, this is a very large palette and I'm just not reaching for it. I feel like I have these shades a zillion times over in a lot of palettes. Most of the highlighters don't work for me. In fact, I think these are the only two that do. I have to use this white to kind of mix with this one and then I can make it work. So I have to use these down here as eyeshadows, which is fine. It doesn't really fit in my drawer as well, so I have it hanging on the back of a door and then I just forget about it. I've had this for a couple years. I think I can find a good home for it, so I'm gonna pass this guy on. This one I'm seriously torn on. So this is the Zodiac palette. I'm gonna have to zoom out. That's how big it is here. It's enormous, like freaking huge. And that is my biggest complaint with it. You've got a lot of empty wasted space here at the bottom because of how they've chose to lay it out. You do have a mirror at the top, not a giant mirror, but big enough. Foil eyeshadow formula is super interesting. It almost feels creamy. And when I reviewed this palette, I actually talked about how this shade Aries had come broken. And I was actually able, without adding any alcohol or anything else, to kind of actually press it back in and it just stayed. So I feel like there is either a lot of mineral oil or a dimethicone derivative type product in these cream shadows or in these baked shadows that makes them a little different. Listen, there are some seriously gorgeous colors in here. Like, that is so freaking stunning. And that's the problem with this palette. Every time I swatch it, I'm like, oh, look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? Like, I really love how these metallic shades perform and look, and they're so high shine and so freaking intense, and the pigmentation is there for every single one of them. Nice quality mattes in the middle here. I do feel like they're a little redundant in terms of these two purples down here. I really wish it wasn't just a purple color story here in terms of mattes. I wish they had gone with some more pink shades or some more peach shades, or I don't know, it just felt like the mattes were not what I ever wanted to pair up with these on the outside. But I really enjoyed, like I said, the quality of these shadows. If I'm gonna be honest, guys, I'm not reaching for it because I don't see the color story in here that I really want / enjoy. For as big as it is and for as much space as it takes up, the quality's there. If they had condensed this down and changed out the mattes, I would have kept this just for the baked shadows alone, but I can't justify that as the only reason that I'm keeping this palette, so I'm gonna pass it on. So this is the BH Cosmetics Festival palette. This I got last year. This also has a lot of brights in it now that I see it, so I'm wondering if I need this on top of the Juvia's Place palette that I said I was going to keep. Really did enjoy this BH Cosmetics Festival palette. The quality is definitely there. I think that the shimmer shades are beautiful. I think the mattes are super pigmented. Like, this is the first palette I had from BH Cosmetics last year where I went, holy crap, you have changed your formula and wow, is it amazing. Like I couldn't get over how impressed I was with the shadow quality and just what they had done as a brand, especially with the mattes. The shimmers were gorgeous too. Where I'm struggling right now is I feel like I don't wear these brights very often. I do think I'm still going to keep the Juvia's one, and I'm going to pass this on to a friend who I think is really going to be excited to get it. Okay, so my last BH Cosmetics palette is the Royal Affairs palette. Guys, I really like this. I reviewed this one last year. I like the muted tones of it. So I've got this really cool army green color. I've got this really interesting sort of orangey wheat color. I've got a nice peach. I've got this really fun lime green that's just, I don't know, it's super fun to play with. I pop that in the inner corner from time to time when I'm feeling super funky. The quality of the shimmer shades is gorgeous. My arm is super stained right now from the last palette, that BH Cosmetics Weekend Festival palette just stained the absolute heck out of my arm. And I'm having a really hard time getting that pink off. Like I said, I really like the shimmer shades that they've picked in here. We've got some more neutrals, but they're neutrals with a little bit of funk to them. Like I love this sort of dirty olive gold. I think that's beautiful. We've got sort of a really warm rosy bronze shade, and I know these are neutrals that are probably in other palettes as well, but I really liked the quality of all of the shimmer shades that were in here. I thought they all performed incredibly well. And then the mattes that you could pair with them were just so interesting. You had really great cool tones in here, and then you've got some warm tones, you've got the greens. This sort of wheat color is absolutely stunning, cool color. I loved this sort of deep rusty color. You got a nice plum. You have a black. The black is not the blackest black. It's more of a sort of lighter charcoal color when you actually use it, but I don't mind that because I don't usually reach for a super intense black. This is just a great palette. I love this one. Not a dud shade in here, in my opinion.